That child isn't mine." The words exploded like thunder in the sterile hallway of St. Mary's Hospital in Queens, echoing off the pale green walls. Marcus Reed's voice rose with each syllable, drowning out the gentle hum of medical equipment. "You really think I'd fall for this pathetic scheme? A housekeeper, a nobody? This is absolutely pathetic." Before we continue with this incredible story, hit that subscribe button below and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support means everything to our storytelling community, and we love connecting with viewers from around the world. Elena Martinez, 29, sat motionless on the narrow hospital bed, her arms wrapped protectively around her newborn son. Her hands trembled from exhaustion and emotion as she cradled the baby with fierce tenderness. Her dark eyes were red and swollen, not from childbirth, but from months of carrying this secret alone. She didn't answer him, her lips pressed together so tightly they turned white, her body curling forward like a mother bird sheltering her young from a storm. "I came here to see this with my own eyes," Marcus continued, pacing like a caged animal, his expensive shoes clicking against the linoleum. "So you'd never try this ridiculous scam again?" "Marcus," Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, just look at him. Really look at him." "I did look," he snapped. "He looks like every other damn baby in this place." But then Elena shifted slightly, turning the baby toward the morning light streaming through the window. The golden rays fell across the infant's face, and that's when it happened, the moment that would haunt Marcus for months to come. He saw them, the eyes, that unmistakable storm-gray color that had stared back at him from mirrors his entire life, the same haunting shade his father had carried, a color so rare it was practically a genetic signature carved into the Reed family tree. The baby blinked slowly, those pewter eyes focusing with impossible intensity, and for just a heartbeat, Marcus felt the ground shift. His gaze drifted to the baby's pale skin, too light to ignore, too familiar to dismiss. His heart skipped once, a hiccup of recognition. But then he blinked hard, shook his head, and deliberately looked away. The wall around his heart slammed back into place. "Coincidence," he muttered. "Genetics are messy. That doesn't prove a damn thing." The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. Elena watched as doubt flickered across Marcus's face like lightning. There and gone so quickly she almost thought she'd imagined it. "You planned this," Marcus snarled suddenly. "Had someone else's baby and figured you'd pin it on me. Must have thought it was your golden ticket out of poverty." His words sliced through the room like shattered glass. People were watching now, hospital staff trying to look busy, patients shuffling past with curious glances. But none stepped forward to question the powerful white man in the $1,000 coat pointing fingers at the exhausted Latina woman in a faded hospital gown. "You think just because you slept under my roof that gives you the right to destroy my reputation? You're nothing. Less than nothing." The whispers began spreading through the corridor. "She's just trying to trap him. Women like that are always looking for a payday. She should be ashamed." Elena heard every word, felt each judgment like a physical blow. Still, she said nothing. She closed her eyes tightly, letting tears streak silently down her cheeks, not loud, dramatic sobs, but quiet, heavy, exhausted tears of a woman tired of fighting. 9 months earlier, the Reed estate sprawled across 10 manicured acres in Westchester County, a monument to wealth that rose from the landscape like something from a fairy tale. The mansion stretched endlessly, its glass walls offering stunning views, but creating an atmosphere of cold, sterile beauty. Elena had been working there for 3 months as invisible domestic help, exactly the way the job required. Each morning began before sunrise, folding monogrammed towels, wiping surfaces that hadn't been touched since yesterday, preparing coffee for a man who rarely acknowledged her presence. Marcus Reed was the embodiment of the American dream, a self-made billionaire who'd built a technology empire from nothing. But behind the gleaming facade was a man who moved through life like a machine, profoundly bored with his own success. The Winter Gala was an annual charity fundraiser that served as much to stroke egos as raise money. Elena worked the event like a ghost, floating between rooms with silver trays, her smile professional and practiced. The guests barely saw her. She was part of the elegant machinery that made their evening seamless. Later that night, after the last guest had departed, Marcus called her into his private study. The request came directly from him, a break in routine that immediately set Elena on edge. The study smelled of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey. Marcus sat slumped in his leather chair, bow tie undone, shirt unbuttoned, a crystal tumbler dangling from his fingers. For the first time, he looked human, vulnerable even. "Do you know what it's like?" Marcus said suddenly, his grey eyes focusing on her with startling intensity. "To have everything any person could want and still feel like you're drowning in emptiness?" Elena remained silent, sensing danger in the intimate turn. "You listen," he continued. "You're the only person in my life who actually listens when I speak. Everyone else is calculating their responses for maximum benefit. But you just exist. It's the most peaceful thing in my world." "I think I should go," Elena said softly. "Why? Afraid I'll hurt you?" She looked into his storm-grey eyes and saw something that scared her more than aggression, raw, desperate need. "No," she whispered. "I'm afraid you won't remember." What followed was not romance but desperation, two people reaching across vast loneliness, finding brief solace in shared warmth. Later, lying alone in the guest room, Elena knew tomorrow would bring no acknowledgement. Marcus Reed would return to being the cold presence who barely saw her as human. She was right. He didn't speak to her the next morning or the morning after. Weeks passed as if that night had never happened, until the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines that would alter both their lives forever. When Elena found courage to tell him about the pregnancy, she chose a Tuesday evening in March. Marcus sat alone on the back terrace, scrolling through emails with mechanical efficiency. "I'm pregnant," she said, the words falling like stones into still water. Marcus paused in his scrolling just for a second, then returned to the screen. "You're joking." "I'm not." Her voice was steadier than expected. "I haven't been with anyone else. There hasn't been anyone else in over a year." Marcus stood unfolding to his full height with predatory grace. "You think I'm going to fall for this pathetic scheme? You think I'll just hand over a blank check because you've concocted some fantasy?" "It's not a fantasy. I know how this looks, but I know exactly what I think," he cut her off. "I know your type. Desperate, calculating, opportunistic. You saw weakness and decided to exploit it." "I trusted you," Elena said quietly. "That night, I thought you saw me as more than just the help." For just a moment, something flickered across Marcus's features. Recognition, maybe regret. But it vanished instantly. He reached into his pocket, extracting a business card and tossing it at her feet. "My lawyer's contact information. You want money? Talk to him. He'll explain exactly what legal consequences you'll face if you pursue this ridiculous claim." "Marcus, you're dismissed. Clean out your belongings and be gone by morning. And Elena, if I hear even a whisper of this conversation repeated anywhere, you'll discover just how unpleasant I can make your life." She left that night with nothing but clothes and a small suitcase. No severance, no recommendation, no acknowledgement of months of service, or the night that changed everything. 9 months later, Elena sat in her cramped Queen's studio apartment, holding Diego against her chest while rain drummed against the single window. The 400-square-foot space served as bedroom, living room, nursery, and kitchen all at once, but inside this small sanctuary, life pulsed with warmth and purpose. Diego slept peacefully, his dark hair soft as silk, and when he stirred she could see the storm-grey eyes that proclaimed his parentage more clearly than any legal document. Her neighbor, Mrs. Santos, knocked before entering with a pot of sancocho. Carmen Santos was a woman in her 60s with steel-grey hair and eyes that held decades of wisdom earned through hardship. "You need to eat more than air and worry," Mrs. Santos said, studying Elena's face. "What's troubling you tonight, mija?" Elena held up a newspaper with the headline, "Tech Titan Reed announces record quarterly profits." The photograph showed Marcus at some corporate event, surrounded by powerful men in expensive suits. He came to the hospital when Diego was born, Elena said. He looked right at him and still said he wasn't his. Called me a liar in front of everyone. But for just a moment, I saw doubt in his eyes. I saw recognition. Mrs. Santos ladled soup into a bowl. Men like him fear truth more than scandal. Truth demands change, and change threatens their control. Elena shifted Diego to her other arm. I don't need his money or his name, but Diego deserves to know who his father is. He deserves to grow up without the weight of secrets. And what about you? What do you deserve? The question caught Elena off guard. She'd focused entirely on Diego's needs, on survival, on building a sustainable life. I deserve the truth, she said finally. I deserve to not be called a liar for speaking it. Meanwhile, across the river in his penthouse, Marcus stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a commanding view of Manhattan. The city glittered like a circuit board, but he felt hollowed out, as if success had carved away everything vital. His lawyer, Martin Blackwood, sat reviewing his tablet. The woman's been stubborn. She hasn't cashed either check you authorized. If she keeps pushing, we'll need more aggressive action. Marcus poured himself bourbon worth more per bottle than most people earned monthly, but it tasted like ash. What kind of aggressive action? Martin's smile was sharp. Character assassination. We document her employment history, financial struggles, lack of education, paint her as unstable, opportunistic. A jury would never believe her word against yours. The words should have brought relief, but they sat heavy in Marcus's chest. He thought of Elena, as he'd last seen her, exhausted but dignified, holding a child whose eyes were unmistakably his own. Give me time to think, he said finally. Martin looked surprised. Marcus had never hesitated when protecting his interests. Time for what? The longer we wait, the more opportunity she has to build sympathy. But Marcus couldn't answer because he wasn't sure himself. All he knew was that every time he closed his eyes, he saw a baby's face carrying the unmistakable stamp of Reed genetics. Spring arrived in Queens with gradual persistence. Diego was thriving at 6 months old, reaching developmental milestones with determined persistence. His laugh was pure joy, and when he smiled, his entire face lit up with innocent delight. Elena worked double shifts at Maria's diner, while Mrs. Santos watched Diego. One Saturday morning, unseasonably warm for April, Elena dressed Diego in his favorite yellow dinosaur onesie. Sunlight streamed through their window, casting everything in golden relief. Diego was particularly happy, gurgling and reaching for dust motes dancing in the light. Mrs. Santos entered with groceries, took one look at the scene, Elena holding Diego in golden light, both laughing, and reached for her phone. Don't move. This moment is too beautiful not to capture. She captured the moment perfectly. Diego's storm-gray eyes sparkling in morning light, his small hand wrapped around Elena's finger, his expression of pure contentment. Elena looked tired, but beautiful, her face soft with maternal tenderness. Without thinking about consequences, Elena shared the photo on social media with a simple caption. My beautiful boy. 6 months of pure joy. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from friends, neighbors, strangers. What a beautiful baby. Those eyes are incredible. You can see how much he's loved. But there were also darker comments. Is this the woman claiming Reed is the father? Those eyes do look familiar, though. That evening, Marcus sat in his town car, scrolling through news feeds and social media platforms. Then he saw it. The image appeared like lightning, stopping his casual scrolling with violent abruptness. Diego's face filled the frame, those unmistakable storm-gray eyes bright with laughter. The resemblance was no longer something he could rationalize away. It was undeniable, written in genetics passed down through generations. Marcus stared until his driver announced their arrival. The corporate dinner passed in a blur while his mind remained trapped in that golden-lit Queen's apartment where his son laughed in his mother's arms. When he returned to his penthouse, he called Martin. I saw the photo, Martin said without preamble. The resemblance is notable, but resemblance isn't proof of paternity. What if I wanted to know for certain? There was a pause. You want a DNA test? Maybe. Marcus, I have to advise against that. If the test confirms paternity, it creates legal obligations. You'd be opening yourself to years of complications. Marcus walked to his window, looking out at the city that suddenly felt smaller in the face of a 6-month-old boy's smile. And if I don't, then nothing changes. This remains a private matter that doesn't affect your reputation or finances. It should have been easy. Marcus had built his empire on calculated decisions that maximized advantage while minimizing risk. But something had shifted when he saw that photograph. Some wall inside him had cracked, and uncomfortable truth was seeping in. Maybe it's time for some complications, he said. The DNA testing facility was designed to handle delicate situations with maximum discretion. Marcus arrived first, having scheduled the appointment through layers of lawyers and intermediaries. Elena arrived 20 minutes later with Diego in his car seat, dressed in her best clothes, the simple black dress from her days at his house. Their eyes met across the waiting room, and for a moment, months of anger and denial fell away. They were just two people faced with truth that would change everything. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Elena said quietly. Diego woke up and looked around with wide-eyed curiosity. His gaze landed on Marcus, and for several heartbeats, father and son simply stared at each other. The resemblance was even more striking in person, not just the distinctive grey eyes, but facial structure, eyebrow formation, even the way he held his head when concentrating. "He's beautiful," Marcus said, the words escaping before he could stop them. After the sample collection, they sat at a coffee shop downstairs. Diego's carrier sat between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said stiffly. "My behavior at the hospital was unacceptable. You called me a liar in front of everyone." "I know." He looked down at his hands. "I was afraid." The admission surprised them both. Marcus Reed didn't admit fear. Afraid of what? Of change, of responsibility, of not being good enough at something that mattered. "I've spent my adult life controlling every situation. The idea that something might require me to be different terrified me." Diego made a small sound, drawing their attention with his intense baby stare that seemed to see through all adult pretense. "He has your eyes," Elena said softly. "I know. I knew the moment I saw him at the hospital. I just wasn't ready to accept what that meant." The DNA results arrived on Thursday morning. Marcus sat in his office, the sealed envelope lying unopened on his desk for 20 minutes before he finally tore it open. 99.7% probability of paternity. When Elena arrived at his office with Diego, Marcus held up the paperwork. The results came back. "What now?" Elena asked. "I want to be part of his life. I want to do right by both of you." He produced support agreements from his desk. Child support, medical expenses, educational costs. You'll never have to worry about money again. Elena glanced at the papers, but didn't reach for them. "Money doesn't make you a father, Marcus. It just makes you a bank account." The observation exposed the gulf between his understanding of responsibility and what they actually needed. "Then tell me what would make me a father." "Time," Elena said simply. "Consistency, showing up even when it's inconvenient, being there for small moments, not just big ones." Diego stirred and opened his eyes, focusing on Marcus with startling intensity. "Can I hold him?" Elena hesitated, then placed Diego gently in Marcus's arms, positioning his hands correctly. The moment was electric. Marcus had wielded influence over markets and governments, but holding his son felt like the most important and terrifying responsibility he'd ever accepted. "Hello," Marcus whispered. "I'm your father." Diego made a sound close to contentment, and Marcus felt something inside his chest rearrange permanently. This was love, not calculated affection or hollow satisfaction, but something primal and transformative. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted. "Nobody does at first," Elena said softly. "You learn by doing it, by showing up every day and trying to do better than yesterday." "I want to try. I want to be the father he deserves." Elena studied his face, seeing vulnerability and humility that hadn't been there before. "Then we'll figure it out," she said finally. "Together." The Central Park playground buzzed with Saturday afternoon energy. Marcus sat on a bench watching Diego toddle across grass with the determined concentration of a newly mobile 15-month-old. The boy had inherited more than his father's eyes. He possessed the same focused intensity, but deployed it in pursuit of dandelions and interesting rocks. "Dada!" Diego called, pointing excitedly at a squirrel. The word still sent joy through Marcus every time. Elena approached from the playground equipment, moving with easy confidence. Financial security had allowed her to return to school part-time, pursuing the teaching degree she'd abandoned years earlier. "He's getting brave," she said, settling beside Marcus. "Yesterday he tried climbing the bookshelf. Mrs. Santos said it's definitely Reed genes asserting themselves." Marcus laughed, a sound that came much easier now. "My grandfather told stories about me climbing everything. I made it halfway up his house before anyone noticed." They watched Diego discover clover, working to pick individual flowers with tiny botanist precision. "The custody arrangement is working well," Elena said. They'd settled into routine that prioritized Diego's needs. Marcus 3 days a week, Elena 4, coordinating with experienced co-parent efficiency. "Better than expected," Marcus agreed, "though I still feel like I'm making it up as I go." "That's parenthood. The moment you think you've figured it out, everything changes." Marcus pulled out paperwork. "The trust fund is finalized, educational accounts fully funded. Whatever Diego wants to study, wherever he wants to go, resources will be there." Elena nodded approvingly. "What about the other thing?" Marcus produced a second set of papers bearing official seals. "Formal acknowledgement of paternity. Once filed, there's no question about his legitimacy, inheritance rights, his place in the Reed family." Diego had moved from flowers to investigating pigeons with fearless confidence. The birds tolerated him with urban wildlife patience. "He's going to be okay," Elena said, watching with parental mixture of pride and worry. "Whatever challenges come up, he's going to be okay." Marcus nodded, feeling that truth in his bones. Diego would grow up knowing he was loved by both parents, that his place in the world was secure, that he had options allowing him to become whoever he was meant to be. "We did good," Marcus said quietly. Elena looked surprised. "Past tense?" "Are doing good," he corrected with a smile. Diego abandoned the pigeons to run back for enthusiastic toddler hugs. Marcus caught him easily, lifting him high while Diego shrieked with delighted laughter. Looking at his son's joy-filled face, framed by Central Park's green canopy, Marcus finally understood what success looked like. It wasn't measured in profit margins or market dominance, but in moments like these, simple, precious, irreplaceable. The storm in his eyes had cleared completely, replaced by calm certainty that comes from knowing your place in the world and accepting its responsibilities. As they packed Diego's toys, Marcus caught Elena's eye and saw his own contentment reflected. They'd learned that family isn't always born from love, but love can always be born from family. If you're willing to do the work, make sacrifices and show up for people who depend on you. Their ending wasn't fairy tale, but something better, real, honest, and filled with hope that grows stronger each day. Diego clapped and pointed toward home, ready for whatever came next, secure knowing his parents, both of them, would be there to catch him if he fell. The storm in his eyes had finally cleared, revealing the man he was always capable of becoming, not perfect but present, not flawless but faithful, not a fairy tale ending but something better, a real beginning built on truth, responsibility, and love. If this story moved you, kindly like and subscribe for more.